What's up, y'all? Dharius Daniels here. First of all, I want to say thank you for logging on. Whether you are a regular and this space has become a space of trusted spiritual nourishment for you, or whether this is your first time, I'm glad you're here. And I hope this video adds value to your life. You're about to watch a message that I preached at our church, Change Church, from a series of sermons I did called Bloodlines. And you know, the heart of this series simply teaches that we all deal with some traits, some trends, and some tendencies that were inherited from those who raised us and those that impacted and influenced us. I hope this message blesses your life. Listen, I'm going to ask you to do two things though. Number one, I'm going to ask you to subscribe. I don't want you to miss any message that we place in this amazing space here. So you press that subscribe button so that you can stay in the loop and in the know. In addition to that, I'm going to ask that if this message adds value to your life, that you would spread the word. I mean, you can text it to someone else and forward it to someone else and email the link to someone else. We want to add value to the lives as many people as possible. Last but not least, I said two things, but I'm gonna hit you with the three. Last but not least, Change Church right now is based in New Jersey. 2 campuses in New Jersey. We have an extension site in Los Angeles in the Glendale area, but we are launching another campus in the Orlando, Florida area. And if you or anyone that you know lives in that area, we'd be so glad to have the privilege to add value to their life and to have them add value to what we're doing and what we're building. I'm going to be in New Jersey and in Orlando, so I'll be speaking live in both places, and we would love to have you as a part of what God is doing. There's an email address on the screen right now. I want you, if you know someone, forward this email address to them, or if you're in the Orlando area and you want to be in the loop and in the know, send us an email with your information. We're going to keep you in the loop. I'm out of the way. I've talked way too long. Enjoy this message from our sermon series called Bloodlines. Genesis 37, beginning at verse number 29, the text says, when Reuben, somebody say Reuben. Say it again, say Reuben. When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, the boy isn't here. Where can I turn now? Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said, we found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe. He recognized it and said, it's my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. No, he said, I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave. So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. This is a reading of God's word. I want us to think around this thought. I want you to say it with me. Don't say it to anyone, but say it for someone. Repeat after me. Say neighbor. Neighbor. Let's say it again. Say neighbor. Neighbor. We are naughty. By nature. Yeah. I want to clap your hands if you're ready to receive God's word. I want to talk about that. Naughty by nature. Family, the particular passage that we just had the opportunity to rehearse today is one that I believe articulates the essence of this series of sermons called Bloodlines. Everyone say Bloodlines. The heart of this series can really be captured in the following phrase. There are traits, tendencies, and trends that we all possess that were not acquired arbitrarily, but inherited generationally. Did you hear what I just said? There are some traits, tendencies, and trends that we didn't just acquire arbitrarily. We inherited generationally. They were passed through the bloodline. They were passed either through DNA. These are tendencies and proclivities and leanings. They were passed through instruction, where we were taught patterns of thinking and practices in the area of our behavior. Or they were passed through exposure, which means there were some things that were taught. There were other things that were caught. Did you hear what I just said? In other words, it is impossible to occupy a room that is filled with smoke and not come out smoky. And whether we are aware of this or not, there are many of us who are in this space today who were reared and raised in smoky rooms. And we may not be as smoky as everyone else in the room, but you can't be in a room that has been infiltrated by smoke and come out of that room and not smell like it. The danger is if the room you occupy has been inundated with and infiltrated with smoke, sometimes you don't know you smell like it until you get outside of that space and get exposed to something different. What are you saying, Pastor Dharius? I am saying that all of us, whether we are aware of it or not, have been impacted by what we inherit. Paul says this in the book of Romans, chapter number 5, verse 19. He puts it this way. He says, by one man's disobedience, many were made sinners. That one man there is Adam, the first human. But then he says also, by another man's obedience, many were made righteous. Paul makes this statement to a group of people who are trying to get a grip on grace. They become Christians, but they have yet to fully understand that their newfound religion is grounded in a concept called grace, where God gives you what you do not deserve. So they are religious, but they are operating with a works consciousness, where they believe that their behavior towards God makes them acceptable. So they feel like their relationship is based on their works. And they're trying to wrap their head around this concept called grace, where God is articulating to them, I accept you not because of what you did, but because of what Jesus did. He's trying to get them to see that you don't do works to make you righteous, that you do works as an expression of your righteousness, that you don't live righteously to become righteous, but you live out of the revelation of who you are now, that you are a follower of Jesus Christ. And he makes this statement, though, that I think is pertinent to what I'm preaching about. He says, family, by one man's disobedience, many became sinners. In other words, he's saying that because we're all a part of Adam's family, because we're a part of the Adam's family, we inherited imperfection from Adam. That to be human as we understand it is to possess imperfection. That it is one of the distinguishing marks between God and us. That God is the ultimate expression and epitome of perfection. And to be human is to not be God, which means I am and we are operating within a realm of imperfection. In other words, we have to teach our children to tie their shoes, ride their bikes, but we don't have to teach them how to lie. We have to teach them to say thank you, and we have to teach them to say bless you. We have to teach them to say excuse me, but we do not have to teach them how to say no. Why? Because they are and we are all naughty by It is what we call in theological circles moral depravity or total depravity. That doesn't mean that every aspect of our existence is evil, but it does mean that there is no aspect of our existence that is not impacted by the imperfect nature that resides on the inside of us. We are all naughty by nature. Children don't have to be taught disobedience. They get that organically and instinctively. We are born this way, and this is why the scriptures speak about the importance of being born again, to get a new bloodline with new traits, trends, and tendencies that reveal and reflect not just your earthly Adam's family, but your heavenly family. Are you hearing me? But although all of us, because we are human, to be imperfect is to be human. Although all of us are human, and because we're human, we all have imperfections, we don't all have the same imperfections. Because the fact that we have imperfections are a reflection of us being a part of Adam's family. But the way those imperfections express themselves through traits, tendencies, and trends are a reflection of our family. Jesus is in your heart, but your family is still in your blood. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And this doesn't mean that they were evil, but it does mean that they're imperfect. It doesn't mean that they're unhealthy, but it does mean that they are imperfect. And ladies and gentlemen, it is incredibly important to be aware of this reality, because your greatest strength is knowing your greatest weaknesses. If you don't know where you're weak, you don't know where you should intentionally be strong. If you don't know where a door in your life is easily opened, then you don't know where to be intentional about barricading it and keeping it closed. And the enemy wants us to be unaware of this reality, because, ladies and gentlemen, we're not only dealing with the impact of Adam's family, we're dealing with the impact of our own. And our text in Genesis 37 is an example of what I'm trying to articulate. There are a few primary characters in this particular passage. One is a man named Jacob. Everybody say Jacob. Then another is a man named Joseph. Everybody say Joseph. Then another set of characters are Joseph's brothers. Everybody say brothers. And even on the onset of Genesis chapter number 37, we see some of these bloodline patterns that I'm talking about. Not stuff that was taught necessarily, but stuff that was caught. We see bloodline parenting problems, parenting patterns. The Bible is clear in Genesis 37. It says that this Jacob had several children, but he had 12 sons. But the youngest son was a son named Joseph. And you know what Jacob did? He loved Joseph more than all the other sons. And he was so blatant in his preference that he had a coat made. It was an amazing coat. It was a coat of many colors. It was an ornate coat. And you know what he did? He gave that coat to Joseph and gave nothing to the other 11 sons. Do we see a problem in that parenting pattern? The favoritism wasn't just felt, it was expressed. This is not relating to children in a different way or having chemistry in different areas. It was a blatant favoritism of the youngest child above all the others. It was Joseph, the Bible says, was the child of his old age. And not only that, it was a child that was had by the woman he loved the most. That seems problematic, doesn't it? But what if I told you that Jacob probably parented that way because that's the way he was parented? Because his father's name was Isaac, and Isaac had Jacob and Esau. And Isaac showed favoritism toward Esau because Isaac and Esau had similar interests. They were outdoorsmen. They were gamesmen. They fished together. They hunted together. And it's easier to have connection with someone with whom you share the same interests. But it takes intentionality to engage with someone who has interests other than your own. And Isaac showed favoritism toward Esau. But what if I told you maybe Isaac did that because that's the way he was parented? Because his father's name was Abraham. And Abraham had a son named Ishmael that he had with a woman named Hagar, who was not his wife. And he had a son named Isaac, who had by a woman named Sarah, who was his wife. And he loved both of his children. Yet contention began to exist between the mother of his child and his wife. And things became so contentious that Abraham changed the way he engaged with the child of Hagar just so there would be peace in his home. There was no synergy. His wife and the mother of his children did not get along. It's tension. And Sarah wants Abraham to have nothing to do with Hagar. The Bible tells us this is the case. I don't know why, but we can explore a number of possibilities that could be pertinent to the persons who are in this place on today. Could it be she felt like Hagar still liked him? Why is she always calling you? No, y'all need to talk about the children. Why y'all talking about, why you asking her how she doing? You need to be asking her how your children doing. It don't matter how she doing. Do you want to know how she doing? Won't you go over there and see how she doing? You probably been over there seeing how she's doing. See, this is what's challenging. We've been practicing a Christianity that is so compartmentalized that it doesn't even speak to the realities that we're dealing with on a day-to-day life. And so now we're fumbling through how to manage reality that the Bible speaks about. And our way isn't working. This is just tension. I don't like her. So there's so much tension. Abraham removes himself from the tension. And in an attempt to simply get peace, Hagar, who's living on his property with his child in her own quarters, has to leave, find somewhere else to live, because Abraham would rather have peace than deal with the fight that accompanies trying to manage two different kids in two different houses. So you, Ishmael, and Abraham walks in your room or doesn't walk in your room. And all you know is mama's packing and crying. And depending on how vocal mom is, you either make assumptions about what happened, which is too much for you to handle that young, or she tells you too much, which is too much for you to handle that young. Also, so now not only do you have to deal with this abandonment you're experiencing by your father, you also got to deal with the reality that your father's wife doesn't like you. Or if she likes you, she doesn't like your mother, and that's a problem. So now you got a child feeling like, I got to choose. And they're in the middle of something that requires a degree of weight and stamina that they are not strong enough to bear. That's a pattern, isn't it? So Abraham showed favoritism. Then his son showed favoritism. Then his son showed favoritism. You see the pattern there? And you see the chaos it's creating? Now, y'all ready for this? All three of these generations were godly people. So I'm not talking about people's houses outside the church. Yeah, okay. As a matter of fact, besides Jesus, the Bible regards Abraham as the most prominent figure in the area of faith. He is the embodiment and the ultimate example of what it means to walk by faith. He is called the father of our faith. As a matter of fact, three of the most prominent religions in the world see Abraham as a prominent figure in their faith. The Bible says in Galatians, if we are Christ, we are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise, a man who lived by faith. But just because you are strong spiritually doesn't mean you are functional relationally. This same Jacob who was parenting by preference is a Jacob that had encounters so unique with God that he had visions of heaven opening up and a ladder going from earth to heaven and angels descending and ascending up that ladder. It's this same Jacob who wrestled with God. Did you hear me? Who wrestled with God, and after this wrestling with God, the Bible says, and some people say, I'm not going to bother this, but some people say that he wrestled there with a man. So that's maybe a theophany or a Christophany, or some people have even said that when he was wrestling with a man, when you're wrestling with God, you're wrestling with yourself. You're wrestling with who you used to be and who you can be. You're wrestling with where you've come from and where you're going. Anybody ever felt like you're wrestling with two yous? Wrestle with God, and his name gets changed from trickster, swindler, conniver to prince with God. But that prince with God didn't change his parenting practices. Did you hear what I just said? Because bloodline issues require a spirituality of intentionality. That if these kind of issues are just automatically and organically addressed, they would not have existed in Abraham's house because he's got more faith than us. They wouldn't have existed in Isaac's house, and they wouldn't have existed in Jacob's house because he's had the kind of spiritual encounters, the transformative spiritual encounters that none of us have had. I don't know about you, but I've never seen a vision in heaven open and a ladder comes down from heaven and angels ascending and descending. I've never wrestled with God where my hip got knocked out of place and I walked with a limp to remind me of what happens when I go back to my old ways. I've never had those kind of transformative experiences. So if their bloodline issues were not automatically addressed, what makes us think you can grow up in smoke and not smell like it? Church didn't fix your smoke. Did you hear what I just said? I said church didn't fix your smoke. This Jacob is raising boys, Joseph, and he parents by preference. And so the brothers recognize this, and the brothers begin to hate Joseph because he's favored by the father. Listen to this. If the father is the one that's doing the favoring, why is it that the brothers hate Joseph and not the father? Because what they really wanted was not to hurt Joseph, but to feel the love of daddy. But in order to do that, I got to envy the thing that took daddy away from me. Joseph can be another child, or Joseph can be a job. Because children will hate whatever takes daddy from me. Joseph can be church. And so what makes matters worse is this Joseph, he starts having these dreams, right? Dreams, these visions. He doesn't see things with the eyes in his head, he sees things with the eyes in his heart. The eyes in your head give you sight, the eyes in your heart give you vision. right? The eyes in your head, you can see 2D. You can see width, you can see height. The eyes in your heart, you can see 3D, width, height, and depth. Like if your vision doesn't have depth, that's not from God. Like if somebody's vision, I just want to be famous, that's 2D, no depth. That's not God. Listen to this. Listen to this. So he dreams these dreams, and one of the dreams, right, there's this sheaf. They're all in the field. There's this sheaf that rises up above all the other sheaves. That sheaf that rises up represents his sheaf, and the sheaf that bow down represents his brother's sheaves. What does he do? He goes to his brothers and says, I had this dream. Why would you tell a dream about other people bowing down to you to people that hate you? Unless you don't know they hate you. Because could it be you don't know how everybody feel about you? Okay. Could it be that all envy don't have evidence? Could it be that some people that are clapping for you are jealous of you? Let me go over here. Could it be that some people that are smiling in your face actually want to take your place? Backstabbers. Could it be all hating ain't harsh? Did you hear me? Could it be all hating isn't harsh? Oh, she good, but you know. Wait a minute, I know what? I remember in Luke chapter 9 when Jesus and his disciples run into some opposition in Samaria, and the disciples asked Jesus, does Jesus want them to do something that they're incapable of doing actually? But when you get angry, you overestimate your capability, right? You get mad, I'm leaving, I can do it on my own. No, you can't. But when you get angry, you overestimate your capability. You overestimate your capability. They said to Jesus, do you want us to call down fire from heaven on them? And Jesus said to them, you know not what manner of spirit you're of. You're saying a thing using spiritual language, but the motive that is a catalyst for it is satanic. Yeah, you know they good, but you know everybody get lucky. So he tells these brothers these dreams, right? And it's so amazing how they respond to the dream by saying, oh, shall you indeed reign over us? Which this is what's dope. They didn't have an issue with him dreaming. They had an issue with their position in the dream. So if his dream was they were elevated and he was bowing down, they would have been like, that's the Lord. Because some people, it's only the Lord if they like it. Did you hear what I just said? Yeah, for some people, it's only God if they like it. See, because some people, they don't have a problem with your dream. They have a problem with the way that dream's gonna impact your relationship. They have a problem with their place in it. This is why everybody who clapped at you, and some of whom wore the same dresses at your wedding, weren't happy for you. Because they're thinking, she gained a husband, but I'm losing a friend. Could that be why they were so overly critical? Could it be that they weren't protective of you? Could it be they're being protective of y'all's relationship? Could it be that they smoky and they don't know it? This is like quiet. Either y'all don't want to hear me or... Yeah. I hadn't spoke here in 2 weeks. I thought, yeah. Okay. I want you to catch this. I want you to catch this now. This is interesting. So they see, they're out in the field one day working, and Joseph's dad say, go check on your brothers. He goes check on the brothers. When he's coming, they say, here comes this dreamer. They don't call him Joseph, but they call him a dreamer, which means that when God is making you into who he's intended for you to be, even people that don't recognize it, don't respect it, have to recognize it. Say, here come this dreamer. And they're so upset, they say, let's kill him. And so when they say, let's kill him, one of the eldest brother, a man named Reuben, says, let's not kill him. There are empty wells around here called cisterns, wells with no water in it. Let's put him in one of these cisterns, right? And Reuben said that because he intended to come back around and get him later. In this sense, Reuben is a metaphor for Jesus. Now, the whole Bible is about Jesus. He's in the New Testament literally. He's in the Old Testament in types and shadows and figures, right? When Jacob had that dream of being Jacob's of that ladder, Jesus was that ladder because he's the one that connects heaven to earth and earth to heaven. When the Hebrew boys were in the fiery furnace, the fourth one in the fire was a Christophany. That was Jesus. That was him showing up. Are you hearing me? When Abraham ran into Melchizedek, that was Jesus, because Jesus is in all of the Bible. Lo, I come in the volume of the book. He's in all of it. So here, Reuben is a metaphor for Jesus, who is our elder brother. When we would have been stuck in a pit, in a low place, in a cistern underneath the earth, eternally, our elder brother stepped up and said, I will go walk on the earth 33 years, lay my life down on a cross, go to a tomb and stay there 3 days to get them out of a low place. Reuben steps up and says, no, let's just put him in a pit. So they put him in this pit, right? And Joseph is probably tripping that he's in the pit, but the text says very clearly he's in a pit and there's no water in it. It used to be water in the well, but now the well is empty. And sometimes we're complaining about a well when we're not recognizing the absence of the water. Did you hear me on this side? That there sometimes you in some stuff you complain about that could have been worse. Because if Joseph was in that well and it had water, he would have drowned. But he's in a well that's dry. And I want to know, is there anyone in this place today? You can look back over your life and say, you know, there were times I was complaining about the well that I was in when I should have been praising that there was no water in it. I went in it, but I didn't drown. I went in it, but it didn't take me out. I fell, but it did not incapacitate me. All right, let's wrap this up. So they put him in a well. What happens is he's sitting in the well, then all of a sudden they see this group of people coming by called the Ishmaelites. And so Judah, who's another brother, says, let's not let him die here when we can make some money off of him. Let's sell him into slavery. Now, I'm not going to bother that, but the word Judah means praise. So you got a praiser who's exploitive. A praiser who's an opportunist. A praiser who takes advantage of people in vulnerable situations. This is why you cannot tell a person's spiritual state by the enthusiasm of their expressions in worship. Because some people that are praised with you on Sunday will sell you on Monday. Say, how you just did all that praising yesterday and then... So see this group, and so they sell them to the Ishmaelites, who hand them over to the Midianites, and they take them to Egypt. Don't miss this now. Everybody say Ishmaelites. But didn't we just talk about Ishmael? Wasn't that Abraham's son? But it was the son he had by Hagar. So that son was the fruit of a mistake. The son is not the mistake. The son is the fruit of the mistake. It's the evidence of the mistake. The mistake was what created the son. Did you hear me? Which, this is important now, which means the Ishmaelites would not exist if it wasn't for Ishmael. That even the mistake was so sovereignly and strategically timed that God timed the mistake in a way that the mistake of the past in one season would be transportation to the future in another. Did you hear me? That God is so sovereign, he knows when to time your mistakes in one season so that he'll use them to bless you in another season. Because Joseph would have never got to Egypt had it not been for the Ishmaelites. I need somebody, Lord, to just help me right there. And let's just pause for a minute, because the enemy wanted your mistakes to be fatal. But God, who redeems all things, will turn your Ishmael into Ishmaelites and use it to carry you to some places. Is there anyone here that'll say, God, use my mistakes to make me stronger, better, wiser? I'm over time. Let's wrap this up then. So those Ishmaelites carry him to Egypt. And he starts, the text says, he works for a man named Potiphar, right? And so this is what's interesting. All throughout Joseph's life, you see this thing saying he's favored, he's favored, he's favored. So the favor he gets from his earthly father is a picture, a portrait of the favor that's on his life from his heavenly father, okay? And so when his brothers took his coat, they didn't realize they didn't take his favor. They took the evidence of it. He didn't have favor because he had a coat. He had a coat because he had favor. So you can take what I have, but you can't take why I have it. I'm trying not to run out of here today. I said they can take what you have, but they can't take why you have it. And so wherever they put Joseph, he prospered. Because when favor is on you, it doesn't matter where they put you, you will prosper. So he works for a man named Potiphar. He ascends up the ranks for Potiphar. And this is the challenge. Elevation makes you attractive to people that weren't attracted to you before you got elevated. And when you're ascending and people are being attracted to you, you need discernment to distinguish whether or not they're attracted to you because you've just been exposed, which meant if they would have found you before you got to where you are, they still would have been with you. Or are they attracted to you because you got elevated and they want to get on your elevator and go along with you for the ride? Because Potiphar, who was his boss, had a wife, and his wife became attracted to Joseph. Because elevation gives you options. And God can only elevate you to the degree to which you're able to responsibly handle options. So if you're confused on the level you own, why would God give you more options to confuse you more? If you don't know what to do with the opportunities you have now, why does he need to send you more opportunities to send you into a deeper state of confusion? Clarity on your life's calling gives you the ability to say no to opportunities other people would give their right arm for. Are you hearing me? And super gifted people are people who really need clarity. Because the more gifted you are, the more routes you can take. And this is why, in my experience, some of the most gifted people are the most confused. Because the enemy knows you're dangerous when you clear. But if you're spinning your wheels, engaging in 8, 9, 10 different things, then some of those things are good things, but they are distracting things because they are preventing you from throwing the fullness of yourself into the thing that's going to bring the greatest return in the kingdom and the greatest return in your life. Everybody needs to get to the point where you can say with godly humility and confidence, this right here is what I do. Come on. Come on. When David got ready to fight Goliath and Saul tried to put his armor on David, David said, I don't do that. But if you give me that rock, this right here, this right here, this right here, this is what I do. I've been called to this. I've been created for this. I've been anointed for this. And I can't do it your way. I celebrate the fact that you can do it your way. I admire the way you do it, but I don't desire the way you do it. Because if you let me do it the way God has wired me, I'll knock this giant down. Somebody shake yourself and say, get off me. I need some room. Don't put me in your box. Don't project your tendencies on me. Let me walk in the fullness of my uniqueness. Get off me. 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 I'm suffocated. Get off me. I'm claustrophobic. Get off me. Get me out of this box. I'm dying in this box. I need room. I need space to breathe, to create, to be me. Let me out. So Potiphar's wife falsely accuses Joseph. Potiphar, I want to say, one part of me says Potiphar believed him. Another part of me said Potiphar didn't believe him because Potiphar put him in prison, but he didn't kill him. Which part of me, that leads part of me to believe that what Potiphar did was in an attempt to appease his wife. He did what Adam did. Let me wrap up here. I'm coming back to that though. Yeah, I got to finish this Wednesday. I got to finish this Wednesday. I'm not going to finish. Listen to this. Listen to this. So he's in prison, but while he's in prison, he meets a butler and a baker. They have dreams. Joseph says, I can interpret your dream. So in one season of his life, he's dreaming dreams. In the other season, he's interpreting dreams. It's the evolution of a gift. Right? Here it is. But he's willing to use a gift on people that can't help him. Because sometimes if we aren't careful, we can engage in selective usage of our gift. And so we only want to use the gift with Pharaoh and not with prisoners. Right? So he properly managed relationships with people he was equals with. Because when you live with a kingdom ethic of honor, you steward relationships with people based on their value in the eyes of God, not based on the benefits you can get from them. Because some people will throw shade at the prisoners but smile all in Pharaoh's face. But he interpreted their dreams, and one of them got out of prison. Forgot all about him, but then Pharaoh had dreams that needed interpreted. This man was working for Pharaoh. He remembered Joseph, told Pharaoh about Joseph. Joseph comes out, interprets Pharaoh's dream. Says, Pharaoh, what you saw is 7 years of economic prosperity coming. And after that, there's 7 years of a recession coming. This is what you should do. During the 7 years of economic prosperity where everybody else is balling till they fall, you save. So that when famine hits the land, we have food, and when other people come to us for it, we'll sell it to them. And when they run out of money, we'll make them give us land. So we'll prosper during the famine. So Pharaoh said, I like that. I like that. Say, I like that. Look at you looking like yourself. Smile, Joseph, looking like yourself. Watch this. So he puts Joseph in charge of coordinating all of that. So one day Joseph is standing in line and all these different people from different countries are coming to get food, and guess who shows up in line? The same brothers that put him in the pit. This is what's scary. He recognizes them. They don't recognize him because they look the same. He don't. Is there anyone here that'll say, I don't even look like what I've been through? The last time they saw me, I was in a pit. Now Joseph is in a palace. In addition to that, Joseph had learned, he had acquired proficiency in the Egyptian language. So even when he spoke to them, they spoke Hebrew. He spoke through an interpreter. He says, because I'm not going back down to an inferior language. You have to come up to the language that I speak. I don't talk like that anymore. My life has been elevated, and so has my language, because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if my mouth is still low, my heart is too. Make sense? All right, I'm really over time, so watch this. Way over. Listen to this. Let's wrap this up. So he reveals himself to them. He says, I'm Joseph. They get upset. They say, oh my God, we ain't mean it. We was just playing. What had happened was, right? And Joseph said, no, don't worry about it. You meant it for evil. God meant it for good. Here it is. Because if you wouldn't have put me in the pit, I wouldn't have been picked up by the Ishmaelites. If I wasn't picked up by the Ishmaelites, I wouldn't have been given to the Midianites. If I wasn't given to the Midianites, I wouldn't have been sold in Egypt. If I wasn't sold in Egypt, I wouldn't have worked for Potiphar. If I didn't work for Potiphar, I wouldn't have been elevated. If I didn't get elevated, his wife wouldn't have been attracted to me. If his wife wasn't attracted to me, she wouldn't have approached me. If she didn't approach me, I wouldn't have ran from her. If I wouldn't have ran for her, watch this, if I wouldn't have ran from her, I wouldn't have got falsely accused. If I wouldn't have gotten falsely accused, I would have never been in prison. If I was never in prison, I would have never met the butler and the baker. If I never met the butler and the baker, I would have never interpreted their dream. If I never interpreted their dream when Pharaoh dreamed his dream and the butler was working for Pharaoh, he wouldn't be able to tell Pharaoh that I was a dream interpreter. And if I didn't interpret Pharaoh's dream, Egypt would have been in a famine. And if Egypt would have been in a famine, we wouldn't have had the food. And if we didn't have the food, you wouldn't have came here. And if you didn't come here, you wouldn't be able to get out of there and come live with me. So you tried to kill me when God sent me to save you. Did you hear what I just said? This means justice and vengeance is not you getting back at the people that came at you. It's you succeeding. It's not God killing your enemies. It's God keeping them alive where they got to watch you win in spite of what they did. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you were blessed. Press the subscribe button so that you can stay connected and in the loop about all that's going on. And if you want to sow back into this field that you're harvesting from and bless the ministry, you can press the give button. See you next time.